Now, joining us from our Pretoria studios is political analyst Dr. Martin Rupiya to give us his insights on this development. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the program. Always a pleasure to talk to you. The last time we spoke, we talked about the euphoria of the moment, and everybody's been waiting for Emmerson Mnangagwa's first move. And I suppose in many ways this is a significant one. What do you make of his cabinet?
My sense is that this is a lost opportunity. What we saw on that Saturday on the streets, not only in Zimbabwe but also in Johannesburg, Pretoria, London, Washington and Australia, indicated a sense of optimism and reflected, an oppressive people that had been, under a oppressive regime. But I think 2 points indicate what the new government perhaps is looking at. The first is, of course, a consolidation of power. The colleagues in government obviously are aware that there may be a counter-reaction to their move to seize power within ZANU-PF. So that appears to have been the primary reason for the cabinet that we see. The second is, of course, interest of the actors, but what they have squandered, I think, is a wider opportunity for responding to more greater, interest and expectations of the ordinary Zimbabweans.
All right, let's talk about the military, because it's clear that he's thanking them and perhaps paying some political debts by introducing them. But the military in Zimbabwe have always sort of been involved there or thereabouts with the politics of the country, but not as much as this or as close as this, firmly entrenched in cabinet.
Well, what we almost feared may have come to pass, in that not only have they now become much more entrenched, but certainly in future, certainly in the medium term, you have to begin to deal with the military in politics. We were expecting a much more responsive, even a second GNU, but listening to the presidential spokesperson, George Charamba, their interest next is to run an election, and they've said to the opposition, forget about a broader government of national unity. We are simply planning for elections in August. So we know for a fact elections are divisive, and Zimbabweans may have required a period of letting off the repression and steam. I think a consensus had been built to provide a national position, perhaps even postponing the elections for a while, to allow the opportunity to build credible institutions, to allow the opportunity for many people in diaspora to come and reconnect with families and also with other pillars of the society. But that also has been squandered. It looks like the new government is much more interested in the constitutional forms of getting an election in August. And to me, that will be even more divisive.
So what does this mean for the opposition? Would they be happy that it's the same ZANU-PF really when you look at it? Because whatever issues that the people had before with ZANU-PF don't look like they've been fully dealt with this new cabinet.
Well, I think one of the calculations of the new government is, of course, to assume that the opposition is weak, divided, and is unable to present a coherent force that would likely remove them from power. But I think they are missing the point in that the sentiment which we saw on the streets on that Saturday worldwide celebration of the removal of the old government was that people are expecting a little more leadership rather than to look towards the opposition. Of course, the opposition must and will play a role, but the questions that face Zimbabweans are much greater. The oppression, the impoverishment, the forced into exile that we have witnessed. Now, all of that, in my view, needed time for us to settle down before we would go into an election. Certainly, as things stand, the incumbent may win the election, in August. There's been very little reform, in terms of, undertaking, and people are looking towards, economic prosperity or even simply relief, rather than, thinking of an election, 8 months from now.
Is it possible that he actually might do good and that perhaps we're prejudging him just on a basis of a list of names?
Well, I think the first thing that we must acknowledge and, of course, try and get into the policy loop is to what extent has he responded to the abject poverty that is the current situation of the ordinary Zimbabweans. That may not, in fact, be set aside while one is putting together a government that for now, looks like it is really consolidating power within the ruling party. So there's a wider question, and for now it has not been responded to, but of course you are right, we must give them the opportunity to prove themselves, but I think we must not ignore the fact that you have millions of Zimbabweans that were almost ignored by the previous regime. And this was part of the statement that General Chiwenga made on that Monday morning. And that situation still obtains as we speak.
All right, we've run out of time, but perhaps you can answer these two thoughts in one answer. Joyce Mujuru, one thought that perhaps this would have been an opportunity to bring her back and her constituency into the ZANU-PF story, because they both had a common enemy, I guess. They both got fired as deputy presidents by one person. And then the other side of this, people like Chinamasa coming back. He didn't cover himself with any glorious finance minister the last time around. Why is he key in this cabinet to Mnangagwa?
Well, the point is that he still has to appoint vice presidents. So perhaps we must give them time. Joyce Mujuru may come back. But in terms of the economics, there is not a single world-renowned economist who is in charge of Treasury or the fiscus. And this is why we think, for now, they are recycling, the old deadwood. And these are the preliminary sentiments, at least, that are coming from the ordinary people.
All right, Dr. Rupiya, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much for your insights, as always. And we watch and see what happens in the next chapter of this intriguing story that is a post-Mugabe Zimbabwe.